Welcome back, America. People say, Mark, what's your hobby? I read. I am obsessed with reading. I'm obsessed with knowledge, and not just people I might agree with, but people I don't agree with. And I'm not talking about mostly people who are in the media. I'm talking about ancient history, modern history, also science and philosophy. And one of the things I keep reading is that the regime in Iran is able to produce 7 nuclear weapons. It's just now a matter of them fusing the technology that they have developed with intercontinental ballistic missiles and now their nuclear technology. And I wanted to bring a great expert on the program to talk about this, Robert Greenway, former National Security Council Senior Director under President Trump, one of the principal architects of the Abraham Accords, director of the Allison Center for National Security at the Heritage Foundation. Robert Greenway, I am not watching the media ringing the bells, banging the pots and pans that Iran is a blink away. We're going to wake up one day, oh my God, they have 7 nuclear missiles. I'm not hearing a thing from the White House, despite the fact that, quote unquote, Admiral Kirby is over there and should be informing the American people what's coming, because it's coming. I'm not hearing a thing from Joe Biden. All I'm seeing is the constant campaign trashing the state of Israel, kissing up to the Islamic State of Iran, while they're building not just theoretical anymore, they are on the precipice. What do you make of all this?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. And as always, you're 100% correct. And I'm concerned, too. And look, the reason I think they're not calling attention to it is because their partners in government are complicit. Look, the Biden administration, as we all know, you know certainly better than most, they're paying for it. By not enforcing existing sanctions, we've subsidized the program. And so not only are they engaged in terrorism throughout the region, but they're also developing, and they are a hair's breadth away. Look, if they don't test a weapon by the end of the year, it's only their incompetence that prevents them from doing it. And it might, but it might not. And as you stated, they have the delivery systems already in the inventory that can reach Europe and certainly Israel. And unlike other states, including North Korea, they have the stated intent and the motive to use it. And so it's an incredibly dangerous time. And let me add, too, that this was the last conversation that I had with the president in the Oval Office before leaving the administration, was addressing this particular issue. And so this has been something we've watched for a long time. But I think successive administrations in the U.S. have stated this is unacceptable for a reason. And the reason is they would have control over the global energy market and a significant portion of the world's trade. We do not want to give the regime the ability to do that and to attack Israel and the United States.
And yet, the Biden administration is coddling Iran, even though Iran is attacking our armed forces through its surrogates. The Biden administration has paid for the October 7 attack on Israel. It has paid effectively for the weapons being used against our troops and our sailors. It has paid for them to rearm themselves, build up their economy. And it, as you just pointed out, they're paying for this nuclear arms program. And the Biden administration had the worst possible human being on the face of the earth negotiating on our behalf, Robert Malley, who's been given the hook under some kind of secret process. His classification has been pulled, and he brought 3 people in, at least one of whom was back-channeling to the foreign minister of Iran. This makes the Al-Hiss case look like a joke. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's amazing to me that we outsourced our negotiations to Iran, to Iranians that were acting, by all accounts, appearing under the direction and control, and certainly coordinating their public positions with the government of Iran. It's inexplicable to me, but the outcome bears all evidence of it. And so if you look at what resulted, like when we transitioned administrations, they were enriching to less than 4%. Now they're enriching to 60% habitually, but we've tested, the IEA has reported over 83%. They had 500 centrifuges in operation when we transitioned and the inauguration occurred. Now they're over 5,000. And so again, what has happened is not the withdrawal from the JCPOA, as they like to claim. The reality is the policy of appeasement has funded the expansion of the program, and that's exactly what's resulted.
So this administration runs to the UN and they want a ceasefire resolution against the state of Israel. This administration is now investigating Jewish citizens in Judea and Samaria and issued an external executive order targeting them. This administration their State Department is conducting an investigation of Israel, quote unquote, and potential war crimes. This administration is now demanding that Israel present it with a list of what it will do with any weapons it will now receive. And this administration is trying to organize Europe and the Arab countries to unilaterally recognize a separate Palestinian state that will be a Palestinian terrorist state, all the while lifted all the restrictions on Iran that is a whisper away from having nuclear weapons. My question to you is this: where is the counter pressure coming from? I don't even hear Republicans talking about this.
You're absolutely right. And to a certain extent, this has now become a domestic political issue for the left and for the president, as they're challenged now to make sure they've got the turnout and the votes to support their position. The reality is, you're exactly right. We're supporting the government in Tehran. We're subverting our partners and allies in Israel at a time when they desperately need our support. And believe me, no one in the region understands exactly why this is happening. They had low expectations, I think, when the administration came in, but I think they've been shocked at the degree to which we're undermining our partner and ally in Jerusalem and supporting the government in Tehran. And the results, again, bear evidence of it. And I think what's going to happen in the next phase of this, inevitably, as Israel finishes the job in Rafah, we're now likely to see Hezbollah initiate operations, and Israel will have to respond. And I think a ground operation in southern Lebanon is an almost certainty. And when that occurs, it's going to be hard to put this back in the bottle.
You got this tiny little country with a very small population. They have a small industrial base. They rely on us in many respects, where they purchase certain armaments and so forth. We're putting the screws to this country. It is the only country standing between us and Iran, because the President of the United States, in my view, his behavior, his conduct, I'll say this, you don't have to, is truly, in my view, treasonous. You cannot have a commander-in-chief who has an administration, a Department of State that is enabling, funding the terrorist activities, funding the nuclear programs, if not directly, indirectly, of a state that is threatening us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Robert Greenway, former National Security Council Senior Director under President Trump. Robert Greenway, you just mentioned when Israel's done with Hamas, although the Biden administration is doing everything it can to prevent Israel from actually having a victory against Hamas, which is mind-boggling. Iran's already given a word to Hezbollah, the other end, to go ahead and attack Israel. Why do you think Iran is doing all this?
Look, I think the calculation was to take the axis of resistance, which was always designed to be an offensive deterrent, so that if anyone struck inside Iran, it would be employed to threaten their adversaries. And I think the decision has been made to put it into complete offense and to initiate the operations we saw beginning on October the 7th. The idea is gradually and incrementally bring Israel to the point of exhaustion, where it can no longer strike and impede the completion of their nuclear weapons program, which would ensure regime survival and allow it to exert its influence unchecked across the region. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. And I think that's what's likely to occur as Israel completes its operation and Hezbollah enters into the fray at scale.
Well, let me put a fine point on this, because I think that's a brilliant point. You're saying Iran right now has orchestrated all this through its terrorist surrogates to keep Israel bogged down, knowing we have a man in the White House who is coddling, appeasing Iran and their terrorist surrogates. And now is the time to break out with their nuclear weapons. Is that your point?
Absolutely. So as you see now, a circumstance they never imagined, where the U.S. would not prevent them and in fact enable them by constraining Israel. Now the only obstacle to them and their objectives is Israel. And if they can bring them to exhaustion and the U.S. is complicit, they achieve their goals. And this is when Khamenei is now positioning himself and a successor to ensure the second regime succession plan. And I think that is very much a top of mind for him. They saw what happened in Libya, North Korea, and in Ukraine. They know that regime survival is contingent upon possession of nuclear weapons. I think that's where they're headed.
Wow. I think you're now right on. I think this is 100% correct. I want to swing back to the media. There's no discussion of this in the vast majority of the media. I see nothing being done in Congress, whether it's Republican committees in the House or Democrat committees in the Senate. I see no discussion by party leadership, particularly the Democrats, about any of this, because they just circle the wagon around Biden. In fact, it's worse. You see Biden kowtowing to political elements and political movements that are led by individuals like Talib, who keep talking about the river to the sea. And Joe Biden is so worried about saving his own ass in this election that he's doing everything possible to undermine the state of Israel publicly, privately, militarily, economically. Iran sees it. The Palestinian terrorists see it. Our other enemies see it. And this has created this horrendous circumstance in this country. And yet is our media simply incapable of explaining this or unwilling to explain this?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think their inclination is to support the policies and objectives of the administration. And they've been fully complicit supporters since Obama was attempting to sell the JCPOA. And so I think at the end of the day, we're seeing a media that is certainly supports the ideas and are complicit. And you see a distracted political class with the conflict in Europe, with the potential risk in Taiwan. I think there's little political capital and time to do it. And unfortunately, that's what the mullahs are counting on to complete the job.
Finally, what happens if Iran gets nukes, which they're going to get, apparently, because Biden's not doing a damn thing to stop them, and neither is Congress?
If they do, they're going to control by default the world's global energy markets and 25% of the world's trade and information flows. We've seen the Houthis disrupt undersea cables. When that happens, we could move easily into a global recession and potentially depression as they try and exert control over it. And again, China requires, above all else, access to oil in order to fund its military ambitions. And they need 43% of that from the Middle East. Both of those things are at play.
Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia. This is more than a Cold War, isn't it? The Axis powers exist, they're exerting power, and Joe Biden's incapable of even confronting it. Is that about right?
It's taking shape before our eyes, and we're actually engineering the construction of it.
Unbelievable. Yeah, he's worse than Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain didn't pay for the Third Reich. Joe Biden's paying for these Axis powers. Robert Greenway, Heritage Foundation, keep up your great work. We appreciate you, my friend.
An honor to join you. Thank you, sir.
We'll be right back.